Christmas, my daughter-in-law Patricia said, "We'll be spending Christmas at my mom's house. You can stay home." It wasn't the shout or the words that hurt. It was the tone, the kind you use on someone who no longer matters. My son William stayed silent, staring at the tablecloth I had embroidered when he was 10. I waited for him to defend me, but he only mumbled that Patricia's family insisted. She added that at my age, all the commotion wouldn't be good for me. I went upstairs, shaking, refusing to cry. In my own house, the house I had worked decades to earn, I suddenly felt like an intruder. That night, instead of falling apart, something inside me clicked. I opened my laptop and booked a solo flight to Santa Fe. I didn't ask permission. For the first time in years, I chose myself. I didn't know then how much that decision would change everything. Especially when a photo of me on that trip went viral. And William began demanding answers about the man sitting beside me. But this didn't begin at Christmas. It began 3 years earlier, when William and Patricia arrived with suitcases after losing their apartment. I welcomed them wholeheartedly. The first months were fine, until Patricia started treating my home like her project. She dismissed my heirloom sideboard as old-fashioned, and without telling me, sold it for a fraction of its worth. My family's history vanished, and William only said, "It's just a piece of furniture." One by one, my curtains, artwork, porcelain, and traditions disappeared, replaced with whatever suited Patricia's aesthetic. I became a ghost in my own house, eating alone while they shared meals and laughter without me. They used my credit card freely. I paid every bill thousands a month, while Patricia criticized everything from the water pressure to the Wi-Fi. And every time I tried to speak up, the fear of losing William kept me silent. By the time she told me I could stay home for Christmas, something inside me had been chipped away for years. But instead of breaking, I finally acted. I bought that plane ticket, closed my laptop, and smiled for the first time in a long while. The war had begun, and this time I would choose the battlefield. Patricia looked me in the eye and said I shouldn't expect them to help with expenses because I had a pension and a paid-off house, while they had nothing. She made me feel selfish for wanting support in my own home, and the worst part was watching William become a stranger, avoiding my gaze, giving one-word answers, always stressed and distant. When I tried to talk to him one night, he accused me of silently judging Patricia, as if I were the problem in my own house. By November, I was barely speaking. Patricia announced she was hosting a small gathering and asked me to stay in my room so her friends could use the living and dining room. I agreed, as always. From upstairs, I heard them compliment Jess on her beautiful home, as if I didn't exist. When I finally came down, the house was a mess, and 3 of my German porcelain plates were shattered. Patricia dismissed it. "They're just plates," and handed me a trash bag to clean up. The following days blurred together. Patricia kept redecorating with my money, complaining about everything I did. when I returned home one afternoon and found my Virgin Mary statue stuffed into a box because it was ugly and cheapened the entry. Something inside me cracked. I placed it in my room, one of the last spaces that still felt like mine. December arrived, but Christmas felt hollow. Patricia replaced my colorful decorations with minimalist white lights and insisted on a tiny artificial tree. The house looked perfect and soulless. From the stairs, I watched her transform my home into something unrecognizable. On December 17th, we ate dinner together. Patricia talked about plans with her family, then casually said they'd spend Christmas at her mom's house and that I could stay home. My world went silent. But instead of collapsing, I felt something else, a cold, clear rage. That night, I went upstairs, opened my laptop, and started searching flights. I found one departing on the 22nd. For the first time in years, my mind felt sharp. My finger hovered over the purchase button, and I realized this wasn't just a trip. It was a reclaiming of my dignity. Helen finally stopped asking, "What if?" After years of fear and tiptoeing around William and Patricia, she opened her online banking and added up every bill, every loan, every whim she had paid for. The total, more than 3 years of her life savings, made her physically sick. She washed her face, stared at the tired woman in the mirror, and whispered, "No more." With sudden clarity, she created a folder labeled evidence and saved everything: bank statements, bills, photos of the furniture Patricia had sold, messages asking for money. She didn't know what she would use it for, only that she needed it. Then, with shaking hands, she called the number she had saved for months. "Carol," she said, her voice broke. "I need to get out of here." Her old friend listened to everything, the 3 years of humiliation that poured out like a flood, and simply said, "Come to Santa Fe for Christmas. I already bought your ticket." Helen was terrified of losing her son forever, but Carol's question cut through her. "Do you really have him now?" She didn't. That night, unable to sleep, Helen replayed the last 3 years in her mind. Before dawn, she wrote a note. "I'll be away for Christmas. Have a good holiday." No explanations. None owed. She packed the suitcase her late husband had given her for their anniversary, the one meant for travels she never took. From the back of her closet, she pulled dresses she hadn't worn in years, good shoes, her perfume, her mother's pearls. She packed the version of herself that had been buried. She hid her suitcase and waited. She cooked and cleaned as usual. But inside, something had shifted. When William and Patricia left for Patricia's mother's house on December 23rd, Helen watched their car disappear and smiled for the first time in years. Before dawn the next morning, December 24th, she dressed carefully, choosing a terracotta-colored dress that made her feel alive again. The woman who stepped out of the house was not the same one who had lived there. She didn't yet know that the stranger she was about to meet would change much more than her Christmas. He would change her whole life. I put on light makeup and looked at myself, really looked, and saw a hint of hope. With my suitcase in hand, I walked through the familiar silence of the house, but this time it felt like freedom. I called an Uber, shut the door behind me without looking back, and headed to the airport. Surrounded by holiday travelers, I felt strangely steady, free. The flight to Albuquerque was calm. I watched Lowe's angels disappear the city where I'd lived, loved, raised a son, and lost myself. A shuttle took me through the desert to Santa Fe, where the sky was impossibly blue, and the air smelled of cinnamon and coffee. Carol was waiting at her small adobe house, and when she hugged me, years of pain broke open. I cried for everything I had swallowed, and she held me without a single empty phrase. She showed me a bright, cozy room and told me to rest. We were going out for Christmas Eve. I bathed slowly, savoring something as simple as time, then dressed in the navy blue dress Robert had loved. Carol surprised me with a silk shawl. "You're going to shine," she said. Santa Fe was glowing with luminarias. Families walked the streets. Carols floated through the air. Carol led me to a warm, lively Christmas dinner at a friend's house. And there, on the terrace, I met Arthur, a tall, silver-haired man with kind eyes and a quiet dignity. It wasn't love at first sight, but something like recognition. Two people who understood loss. We talked for hours about life, books, grief, and strength. He listened, really listened, when I told him pieces of what I had endured, and he told me how he reclaimed his life after losing his wife. His words struck me. People confuse kindness with weakness. You deserve happiness too. The dinner felt like stepping back into the world. When our hands brushed, I felt the faintest spark of hope. We took a group photo on the terrace, Santa Fe's lights behind us. I didn't know then how important that picture would become. After midnight, Carol teased me gently about Arthur. I laughed, but something warm fluttered in my chest. When I checked my phone later, no calls from William, no messages. It didn't hurt anymore. The next morning, sunlight filled the room. I walked downstairs in pajamas, something unthinkable in my own house, and Carol showed me the Facebook photos she posted. There I was, smiling next to Arthur. The caption read, "The happiest Christmas in years." Comments poured in, mostly kind, surprised to see me happy. But one froze me. "Helen, where are you? William is asking. Call him." I checked my phone. Missed calls. Dozens of messages. William's texts grew increasingly frantic, then accusatory. Patricia's were cutting and cruel. "At your age, how embarrassing. You need to explain yourself." Even from hundreds of miles away, they tried to shrink me, and Carol simply watched me, waiting, but not worried, because she already knew what I hadn't yet fully admitted. I was no longer the woman they could control. I showed Carol the messages. She wasn't surprised, almost satisfied. "It was only a matter of time," she said, "for them to realize you're not furniture they can store in the basement." Then William called. His name flashed with that old photo where he used to smile. Carol put a hand on mine. Are you going to answer? Yes, I said, but on my terms. I picked up. Mom, why weren't you answering? William exploded. Patricia shouted in the background. Merry Christmas, William, I said calmly. I'm in Santa Fe with my friend Carol. The man in the picture is Arthur, her friend. Patricia cut in. You can't just do these things. You're making us look ridiculous. Something inside me clicked. Me. Because I didn't ask permission to enjoy Christmas. Because I smiled in a picture. They went silent. Mom, that's different, William tried. No, the difference is you two make plans freely, and I'm expected to ask permission to step outside my own house. Patricia snapped that I should act my age. Family is built on respect, I said, not convenience. Years of swallowed words came out steady and sharp. Patricia accused me of disrespecting their sacrifice. Sacrifice, I said. I've paid every bill for 3 years, electricity, gas, food, your whims, and never got a thank you. More silence. When are you coming back? William finally asked. On the 28th. Have a nice Christmas. I hung up, hands shaking. Carol hugged me, thrilled. For the first time, I had defended myself. Then, an unknown number called. Mrs. Helen, the attorney said, your son came yesterday asking about your will and the deed to the house. The world stopped. He asked, what? He confirmed it. I hung up. Carol went pale. We both understood. Patricia didn't just want my house now. She wanted it later, too. And William was following her lead. The next morning, I made coffee and began writing everything in a notebook, every small theft and humiliation, the sold furniture, the missing curtains, the charges on my card. 3 years summarized in cold ink. At the end I wrote, William asks about my will. William called again. This time, his voice was unsure, afraid. Patricia says you're changing, becoming selfish. Selfish for having my own life, I asked. He didn't answer. I asked the question I needed to ask. Why did you go to my lawyer? A long silence. It was Patricia's idea, he whispered, and you agreed. He insisted they just wanted to be prepared. I'm not dying, I said, and my will is my decision. If you want to continue living in my house, I added, there will be new rules. We'll talk on the 28th at 6 p.m. Mom, I love you, but I won't be disrespected anymore. I hung up trembling, but with resolve. Carol hugged me. I'm proud of you. I'm scared, I admitted. Good. Fear means this is real. We walked around Santa Fe, visited galleries and bookstores. For the first time in years, I smiled for myself. At sunset, I told Carol, it's sad it took me so long to realize I deserve respect. It's never too late, she said. Then my phone buzzed, a message from Arthur. He asked how I was, said he'd heard my day was difficult, and offered to talk as a friend. Nobody had asked me how I was in years. I said yes. He replied almost instantly, all the time in the world. Tomorrow at 10. I agreed. Carol watched me, smiling. What? I asked. Nothing, she said. It's just a few days ago you were broken. Now you're meeting someone who treats you like a person. It's only coffee, I said, but we both knew it was more than that. Of course it was just coffee. Carol and I laughed at the fact that Patricia had been driven mad by a simple photo. That night, I checked my email. Mr. Harrison confirmed my January 3rd appointment. We'd be modifying my will and securing my assets. I closed the laptop. My plan was forming, but I still needed one thing: proof of Patricia's intentions, in her own words. December 29th, 10 a.m. The cafe smelled of cinnamon. Arthur was already there, reading Steinbeck. He stood when he saw me and pulled out my chair. You look better than yesterday. I feel better. I told him the essentials: the will, William, the manipulation. Arthur listened quietly. When I finished, he said, manipulators only work when you let them. The moment you set a boundary, their power disappears. But he's my son. Then love him from a place of self-respect. Loving him doesn't mean letting him destroy you. Those words stayed with me. We walked for hours, talking about books, music, trips we wanted to take. When he left me at Carol's house, he took my hand. You're going to get through this stronger. How do you know? Because you've already started. That night, I packed. I was going back to Lowe's Angels, back to the confrontation. But this time, I had something new. My voice. I'd learned something in 4 days. Better to be alone with dignity than accompanied in humiliation. And my son would have to choose which side he stood on. December 30th, afternoon, the plane landed under a gray sky. Carol hugged me. Remember, you're not alone. I'll call you after the lawyer tomorrow. During the taxi ride, William texted, do you still want to talk today? Yes. 6 p.m. when I arrived, William opened the door instantly. He looked exhausted. The house was spotless, too spotless, cleaned for show. I changed into jeans, a white blouse, and the blue shawl from Santa Fe. I looked in the mirror. You can do this. 6:00 p.m. The dining room. William and Patricia were waiting. He was nervous. She was cold-eyed, arms crossed. I sat at the head of the table, the seat I hadn't used in months. Patricia spoke first. We owe you an apology about the photo. You have a right to have friends. How generous permission to have friends. Thank you, Patricia, I said. But that's not why we're here. William cleared his throat. Mom, the lawyer. I went. Patricia suggested it, but I made the decision. I shouldn't have done it without talking to you. Why did you do it, William? He looked at Patricia, who stared back as if guiding him. Because we wanted to know how things stood, to plan our future. Does your future include my death? No, Mom. Then what? Because it looks like you're measuring the inheritance before I'm even gone. Patricia sighed dramatically. Helen, don't be so dramatic. Families talk about these things. It's normal to want to be informed. Normal, I said, is to talk to the person who owns the house, not sneak behind her back. Patricia insisted they had a right to know what would happen to my house. When she claimed they had helped with expenses, I showed them the truth. $86,400 spent in 3 years. William went pale. Patricia defended herself, saying I was his mother and obligated to help them. My obligation ended when he became an adult, I said. Everything after that was generosity, not weakness. Patricia snapped, accusing Santa Fe of turning me against them. I reminded her that all I had rediscovered was my right to respect. She mocked the photo again, implying I looked ridiculous at my age. I answered calmly. I was 68, not dead, and I didn't need anyone's permission to live. She pulled William forward, demanding he defend her, but for the first time in years, he didn't. Shut up, Patricia, he said, trembling. Mom is right. Patricia tried to blame me for playing the victim, but William stopped her. We treated her like a burden, he admitted. Furious, Patricia grabbed her purse and turned to me with a threat. If you kick us out, you'll be alone. No son, no grandchildren. Her words no longer held power. If the price of family is my dignity, I said, I prefer to be alone. She stormed out. William broke down, apologizing for letting everything happen, for letting Patricia think for him. He explained the will was her idea. She'd made it sound reasonable, as manipulators do. I held his shoulder. I love you, but I will not live like this anymore. I told him I was changing my will. He wouldn't be cut out, but there would be conditions. He couldn't sell the house. They would pay rent, and Patricia would have to respect my home. If she refused, he'd have to choose whether to stay or leave. He cried, but he understood. That night, for the first time in years, I slept peacefully. December 31st, 7 a.m., I woke early to make coffee. To my surprise, Patricia was already in the kitchen, overly polite, acting as though nothing had happened. She claimed things had gotten out of hand and pretended to care about family harmony. Then came the true purpose of her sweetness. We can start contributing, maybe $200 a month. A laughable offer after everything I'd paid. That gesture, she said, should give them a voice in decisions about the house. She wanted say in remodeling and changes, control, dressed as cooperation. She dismissed the furniture she sold and items she threw out as so long ago. That was when I realized I needed proof, so I played along, letting her talk. She tried to guide the conversation toward my will. You're not going to live forever, Helen, she said softly. This house should go to William. Cancel the lawyer appointment. We can decide things as a family. There it was, her real motive, laid bare. I acted confused, vulnerable. Maybe, I don't know, her eyes lit up. Trust us, she said, touching my hand, but I saw the calculation behind her smile. When she finally left the kitchen, humming like she'd won, I waited 5 minutes, pulled out my phone, and checked the screen. The entire conversation had been recorded. Every threat, every manipulation, every attempt to push me out before I was even gone. My hands shook as I saved the audio in 3 places. I finally had the proof I needed. Carol had been right. Manipulators only have power when there are no witnesses. After recording my conversation with Patricia, I went to my room and called Mr. Harrison to confirm my appointment. When I told him about the recording, he immediately said it was valuable evidence and that we might need stronger protections, an irrevocable trust, clauses preventing the sale of my home, possibly even a restraining order if needed. His words chilled me. This was no longer just about boundaries. It was about safety. That afternoon, I stayed in my room pretending to be tired. I heard William and Patricia arguing downstairs. Late at night, William knocked on my door. He admitted Patricia had told him I was being difficult. After offering them a ridiculous $200 rent when they cost me nearly $10,000 a month, William confessed the truth. Patricia had no intention of changing. She was only pretending because she feared I might evict her. He sat on my bed and asked the question that had haunted me. If you had to choose between dignity and not being alone, what would you choose? My answer finally came easily: dignity. He nodded. He already knew. Before leaving, he told me he would respect whatever decisions I made with the lawyer. For the first time in years, I felt relief. My son was still in there, under all the fear and manipulation. The next morning, I dressed with purpose. When we came downstairs, Patricia appeared ready for a business meeting, acting as if nothing had happened. We drove in tense silence to Mr. Harrison's office. Inside, the attorney explained that my current will left everything to William with no protections, meaning Patricia would legally gain control of my home. I placed my phone on the desk and played the recording. Patricia's voice filled the room, urging me to cancel the appointment, insisting the house should be William's, reminding me I wasn't going to live forever. William's face went pale. Patricia tried to claim it was out of context, but the truth was undeniable. That was when Mr. Harrison presented the new plan. My house would be placed in an irrevocable trust. I would have full lifetime rights to live in it. Upon my death, William would inherit it, but it could not be sold or mortgaged, and part of any rental income would support a foundation for vulnerable senior women. Violating these terms would transfer the house to the foundation. If William and Patricia wished to stay, they would pay market rent $3,000 a month. Otherwise, they had 30 days to leave. Patricia exploded. William, however, finally saw clearly. He told her he accepted the conditions. She gave an ultimatum: either he refused or she would leave. And for the first time, my son stood firm. "Then leave," he said. Patricia stormed out, swearing we would all regret it. William broke down crying, apologizing for everything. I held him, telling him it was over. We signed the documents that protected everything I had worked for. When we returned home, Patricia's belongings were gone. She had left a note for William saying he would realize too late what a mistake he'd made. He folded the note and looked at me. The house was quiet, and for the first time in years, It truly felt like mine again. He read the note, folded it, and put it in his pocket. "Are you okay?" I asked. "No, but I will be." That night, we had dinner together, chicken tortilla soup, pastries, hot coffee. We talked about Robert, about the mistakes, the lessons, the future. For the first time in years, my house felt like home again. But the story wasn't over. Patricia had been right. There would be consequences, ones that would change everything. Months later, in February, I woke to the smell of coffee. William had begun getting up early, making breakfast, seeking me out before work. Small gestures that meant everything. At the stove, he said, "I found an apartment. I'm moving out." I felt a hollow ache, but he explained, "I need to learn to stand on my own, to be the man Dad wanted me to be." I told him I was proud. He promised dinner every Sunday. And then he revealed something else. He'd been going to therapy for weeks. He was learning how he'd lost himself. My heart softened. Then he said Patricia had called wanting to reconcile. "And what did you tell her?" I told her no. I need time. I need boundaries. I'm not that man anymore. Later that day, Arthur arrived at my door with sunflowers. We had coffee and tres leches cake. My home was becoming mine again. Paintings rehung, photos restored, plants blooming. Arthur looked around. "Your house feels alive," he said. We talked, and he asked if he could take me to dinner, the beginning of something. I hesitated, but when I thought of Robert, I knew he would want me to be happy. "Okay," I said. March brought rain and jacaranda blooms. William moved into his apartment, and though I cried, the tears were of pride. He came for Sunday dinners, and we healed. Arthur and I began dating, movies, museums, walks in Griffith Park. Not fireworks, but companionship, understanding, respect. In April, I received a call from a hospital. Patricia had been in a car accident. They couldn't reach William. As her emergency contact, I drove there. She sat alone with a broken arm and bruises. "You shouldn't have come," she said. "I know." She apologized, truly apologized for everything. I didn't answer right away. "We all make mistakes," I said. "What matters is if we learn." When I left, she whispered, "Thank you, even though I didn't deserve it." "We all deserve compassion once," I told her. December came again. My house was full. William, his new girlfriend Andrea, Carol, Arthur, supportive neighbors. We laughed, cooked, exchanged small gifts. When Arthur proposed a toast, I stood. "To second chances," I said. "To learning to say no, to finding your voice, to sons who grow, to love that arrives when you least expect it, and to remembering it is never too late to choose yourself." That night, after everyone left, I looked at an old photo of Arthur and me from Santa Fe, the picture that changed everything. The woman who dared to reclaim her life was me, and I would never forget her again. If you're listening and feel invisible, remember, you matter. Your dignity is non-negotiable. Your voice deserves to be heard. It is never too late to take your life back. I was 60 when I decided enough was enough. Your age doesn't matter. What matters is choosing today as your day one. True wealth isn't what you own. It's what you refuse to let anyone